and welcome to the sportsbet.io Euro podcast. There is plenty of these every week. We look at La Liga, Serie A and the Bundesliga ahead of every big weekend of football. This, of course, is our La Liga version where we've got our fantastic friend Juan Castro over in Madrid, as always, to talk us through, what's been going on in Spain. Now, obviously, Juan, before we get to before the sort of the less important stuff, which is the football, obviously there's a huge amount of sadness, understandably, in Spain at the moment. And again, understandably, that has filtered into some of the football as well, hasn't it?
Yes, here in Spain, nobody wants to celebrate goals. No sense to play football. People is focusing on helping these people in Valencia. An enormous tragedy. So all the focus is not in football for one time, maybe in so many years. But the focus is on the Valencia's tragedy. So no aim to celebrate goals here in La Liga.
Yeah, it's obviously been a tragedy. We wish everyone there the very best. We will try our best to try and focus on the football, though, of course, as well. But I think it's just important to start with that, just to make a note of what is happening currently, obviously, in Valencia. We'll move on to Real Madrid against Osasuna to start things off. Real Madrid, a pretty stunning loss to AC Milan midweek. Some of that feeling, of course, had drifted into the game, as you say, Juan. And Osasuna have found some form and taken a big scalp this season in La Liga too.
Yes, they are fifth, so I think it's one of the surprising teams so far in La Liga. And they visit a team, Real Madrid, who has received the same of goals in the last 3 games at home, including Champions League, of course, Borussia Dortmund, then Barca, then Milan. So it's a very tricky game for Real Madrid because, against Milan already the audience view to the players, shifted to the players, so they protest a lot, the audience. So it's a very tricky game for Real Madrid, for Carlo Ancelotti. I don't think he's in danger, but also for Kylian Mbappe, tricky game for them.
That was going to be my next question about Ancelotti, actually, whether or not he was in any danger at the moment, because obviously destroyed in the Classico and then obviously losing at home to AC Milan. This is a very rough patch for him, though, isn't it?
Yeah, if it will be another coach, of course, he will be in the spot. He will be in the headlines of every newspaper, including Marca. He will be, very in danger, in the focus of the staff of Real Madrid, Florentino Perez, and so on. But is Carlo Ancelotti. He has already won 2 Champions League in 2 different eras. He won Champions League last season. He won La Liga. So I don't think he's in danger. The Champions League still is so long. We will see in February, March. But so far, I don't think he's in danger.
And speaking of managers, just very quickly, what has Vicente Moreno done at Osasuna to get them into such a sort of fantastic position for them? And of course, we know what they did against the team who've been so good in La Liga this season as well. They're the only ones to do it. What is so good about this team?
I think he's a very balanced coach. He's a coach very close to the players. He's not so genius in a tactical sense,
right?
But he applied like a common sense to the team. And I have to say one thing. I think Vicente Moreno will be really will receive a lot of applause in Bernabeu Stadium because that he's one of the coaches, one of the persons who has, even on Wednesday they have Spanish, on Tuesday they have a Spanish Cup match, and he was not there because he was helping the people in Valencia because he's from Valencia.
Yeah, I'd forgotten to mention that, and obviously, so it's a particularly emotional day for him as well. It's going to be a really interesting game, just the action on the field. I think both teams to score looks very interesting in that one. We'll move on to La Ceramica and Villarreal against Alaves. Villarreal are obviously having a fantastic season, Juan, but they have been a little bit inconsistent at La Ceramica.
Yes, I'm very irregular, particularly at home. But I think in this particular match, I think they are really favourite. I will be really surprised if Alaves can drop a point over there. Also, you have to imagine that Luis Garcia, the Alaves coach, was in danger, but they won the other day at home, so he could survive a little bit. But I don't think they have really chances in Villarreal.
Was that win over Mallorca, was that about them being good, or was that about Mallorca perhaps having a bad day?
I think both. I think Alaves was pretty better. They were more intensive, which is strange because Mallorca is a very intensive team. So I think they were better, and they score. I think in the first half they scored quickly. So and they afterwards they defend this advantage. So I think they were better.
Yeah, it's going to be an intriguing game, that one. But yeah, Villarreal do look like they're going to get back to winning ways at La Ceramica. Speaking of Mallorca, they host Atletico Madrid on Sunday. Now, obviously, we're recording this on Wednesday morning, and Atletico Madrid do have an away game at Paris Saint-Germain to come in the Champions League first. Mallorca obviously had a phenomenal opening game of this season. They themselves have been a bit inconsistent, but before we get to Atletico, if Mallorca finish where they are in the table now, that's an okay season for Mallorca, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it will be even better than last season with Javier Aguirre. I mean, to be better than last season is quite difficult, and right now they are. Of course, I mean, if they can touch a little bit Europe, that's a tremendous success for Mallorca because they have new players and they have a new coach, so Joseba Arrasate. So I think it's a pretty good season so far.
I read a quote from the Mallorca boss, what is he, Jacoba Arrasate.
The American.
Yeah, and he said, we just weren't very good at all in that Alaves game, which I like. Just his complete, no, we just weren't very good. It just wasn't good enough. As for Atletico, obviously a lot of criticism of Diego Simeone for picking his son. But his son is now starting to score plenty of goals and starting to look very sharp. And maybe those initial arguments towards nepotism are starting to be washed away a little bit because Giuliano Simeone's in very, very good form.
Yes, I mean, some people were surprised because he was in the lineup in the last game in La Liga against Las Palmas. But I was there in the stadium and he did it really well. And he scores. He opened the score, so I think people is really happy with Giuliano. Maybe he's not a super class, world class player, but he's like very cholo player. He's always punching, always fighting, and I think people thinks that he deserves a place in the lineup. But Atletico is 10 points behind Barcelona. It's quite a lot for being in November. 10 points is a lot. So I don't think Atletico fans are really happy with Cholo Simeone, but they won't say never anything about he has to go, or it's the same case than Real Madrid and Ancelotti. If it would be another coach, maybe it would have been more critics, but with Cholo Simeone, it's impossible.
I think you need, with the Barcelona thing, I think you need to kind of take into context a little bit just how good Barcelona have been as well. That's the other thing about that. I mean, Atletico Madrid, there's some silly losses in there, losing at Real Betis, for example, that 1-0 loss. That's a bad loss. We're not saying that Atletico are doing brilliantly, but that points gap, you have to take into account a team who've scored, over 40 goals, is it, or so in La Liga? Who look unstoppable, who are destroying some of other countries' best teams, Bayern Munich, etc. So I think there's a little bit of, we have to take into account just how good Barcelona have been. And if let's go at 8th, then you go, that's really bad. But they're still 3rd.
Yeah, and Cholo Simeone said 3 weeks ago, that the goal for the club, not for the audience maybe, but for the club, not for the players, but for the club, for the staff, is to be at least 3rd and being in the next Champions League. So they are in this 3rd position right now, but it's true. I mean, Barcelona is destroying everything.
Speaking of which, they head to Real Sociedad, which will be completing our previews today. Now, no one really, I mean, maybe outside of Real Madrid, have a great record in head-to-heads against Barcelona. For me, even when Sociedad have lost against Barcelona in recent years, more often than not, they've performed well. They've been perhaps unlucky, or they've at least been in games a lot more than other sides in La Liga have been. Again, listen, you look at the head-to-heads on the face of it, and Barcelona are utterly dominant, as you would expect in this division. They've obviously just won at the Pizjuan as well, Real Sociedad. Where are they at the moment in terms of where they would have expected to be at this time of the season?
I think they are trying to find their way in this La Liga. The last season was really exceptional for Real Sociedad, and this season is very irregular for them. Of course, they are trying to find this way. I think this position is like between fifth, sixth, seventh. That could be, and they are trying to find this way. And maybe Barcelona is one of the places where they can do it. As you say, they compete really well against Barcelona because they have a brilliant games. Maybe not so many points dropped, but I would predict a very tough game for them.
Well, Barcelona have a game again this evening in the Champions League, a game that you would expect them to score a number of goals in. I mean, Juan, we say this every week, but at what point? I mean, at what point does this Barcelona team slow down, or don't they? Because to me, I'm looking at a Barcelona team who are scoring all these goals, winning all these games, and they've still got a number of key players to bring back from injury who will be fresh later in the season. It is absolutely ludicrous. I cannot remember a team going like this, even a big team like Barcelona. I mean, is this the best Barcelona since, what, the heights of Pep?
Oof. For that, I think it has to be like 10 games, not, we are in November, it's so early. I think to say that, I will do it, but in the middle of La Liga. So, because, to compare this team with the Pep team is big words in Barcelona.
Yes, it is. That is true, yeah.
But in terms of figures, of course, maybe not in terms of how they play, because they play well, but not so brilliant than the Pep team, because of course they have not the same players. But in terms of figures, it's unbelievable. It's true that they play this weekend in San Sebastian, which is not the same. But who is going to stop this Barcelona? Who is going to stop? I think could be Real Sociedad. Well, Osasuna stopped them, so why not Real? But tricky game for Real, yes.
It is crazy, the goals that Barcelona are scoring. I mean, if I just run through the last 5 games, 3-0, 5-1, 4-1, 4-0, 3-1. That's just the last 5 games in all competitions. I mean, they're probably going to add 2, 3, 4 this evening away in Belgrade. I cannot... Yeah. It's an incredible... And I think the thing that impressed me most, Juan, is that at the start of the season, we were talking about how Barcelona, this was going to be a year of transition for them, where they try and get on top of the finances, bring a couple of young players in, and just top 2, top 3, perfectly fine, I suppose, in the scheme of things. Right now, I mean, they're just extraordinary, and those young players, we mentioned them last week, but these young players coming in are just mind-blowingly good from La Masia.
Yes, 7 youth players, 7 youth players from the academy against Real Madrid in El Clásico, which is a lot for the elite, and some players who already are sounding for the national team, like Casado and of course Cubarsí, of course Lamine Yamal. But Casado is the one who surprised to more people in this season, because we knew already the others, but Casado was a real surprising player and not much used by Xavi Hernandez in the last season. So I think only Bayern Munich is better than Barcelona in the 5 better ligas in Europe in terms of goals, at least in ratio. But what is doing Barcelona in terms of how they play and the figures is exceptional.
And then at the same time, you're absolutely right about those stats, but then Bayern Munich will go and have a disaster, won't they, in the Champions League? So Barcelona, outside of Osasuna, haven't had a disaster. It's absolutely fascinating, La Liga, at the moment. It really, really is. There's loads of great games. Don't forget, loads of great ways in as well with sportsbet.io. Please do make sure you gamble responsibly at all times. Juan, thank you very much as always.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
We will see you next time.